Today, we're diving into something truly wild. It's a proposal from a source that calls itself the economic hermit of Srirangam. And let me tell you, this idea is so bold, it claims it could totally reshape India's entire economy.
So let's just start with this question. What if a single, really radical idea could change India's economy pretty much overnight? What if you could solve some of the country's most stubborn, deep-rooted economic problems just like that? Sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, our source thinks they've cracked the code.
And boom, there it is, the big idea. The core proposal in all its glory. Abolish every single currency note above 200 rupees. Yep, you heard that right. Banish the 500 rupee note. The whole point? To push almost every meaningful transaction online, making UPI the undisputed king of Indian commerce, like a digital emperor.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This sounds completely bonkers. But stick with me here, because there's actually a surprising method to this madness. Let's really break down how this revolutionary system would work in practice.
The rule itself is incredibly simple. Any payment over 200 rupees has to be digital, period. No cash allowed. I mean, think about it. We already do this with highway tolls, right? Your fast tag beeps and you just drive through. So the question is, why not apply that same smooth, seamless logic to the entire economy?
Okay, so if you do that, how does the government get its money? Good question. The answer is a tiny micro-tax, just a 1 or 2% tax on every single digital payment. And the author has a pretty funny take on this. They suggest this would bring in so much cash that you could basically make the whole income tax department obsolete. Just retire them to a small room with one fan and a calendar from 2009. That's it.
All right, now we get to the fun part. Let's dive into what the author calls the glorious advantages of this 200 rupee max world. And believe me, they paint a pretty amazing picture of what could happen.
First big advantage, you kill counterfeit currency. Dead. With no 500 rupee notes floating around, what are counterfeiters even gonna copy? They're pretty much out of business overnight. It's such a simple, elegant fix for a huge national security problem.
And this is where it gets really, really clever. The proposal's solution to bribery: make it an extreme sport. Seriously, imagine trying to pay a massive bribe using only 200 rupee notes. You wouldn't need a briefcase, you'd need a truck. It turns bribery into a full-on workout. The idea is, by the time you haul all that cash to the destination, you'll be too exhausted to even be corrupt.
And it's not just about bribes. This creates a total logistical nightmare for Hawala operators, the folks running those illegal money transfer networks. Suddenly, moving crores of rupees isn't something you can do in a suitcase. You'd need a whole goods lorry. The author jokes that they'd have to pivot their careers, maybe open up a nice, respectable dosa stall instead.
So what happens to all that black money stashed away under mattresses and in hidden walls? Well, good luck with that. Trying to store crores in 200 rupee notes is, well, it's basically impossible. The author paints this picture of your house looking less like a home and more like a paddy field just stuffed with cash. It makes hoarding illicit wealth a physical impossibility.
The transparency this would force on everyone is just staggering. Every single transaction leaves a digital trail. And it leads to these pretty funny scenarios. Imagine a politician whose entire manifesto is just their QR code. Or think about a criminal having to send a screenshot to prove they paid a bribe. It's absurd, but that's the point.
The vision gets even wilder. The source imagines temples turning into something like financial reality TV. Picture this. Giant screens outside temples, showing a live feed of Hundi collections, with the numbers ticking up in real time. It's called the Temple Sensex. The whole country could tune in and watch the crores pile up. It's this idea of uniting the nation in shared financial awe.
Okay. Of course, no plan is perfect, right? There have to be downsides. But the way the author frames them, well, they're seen as manageable. Not deal breakers, just, let's call them comical speed bumps on the road to economic glory.
So I'm sure you're thinking, wait a minute, what about the real problems? What about villages with spotty internet? Or elderly folks who only use cash? This can't possibly be as simple as it sounds, can it?
Well, according to this source, here are the so-called minor hiccups. First, politicians might need some emotional support once all their funding becomes transparent. The elderly might push back at first, but probably only until their pension shows up instantly with a single beep on their phone. And maybe the biggest casualty of all, stand-up comics would lose like half their material. No more jokes about black money or tax raids.
A national tragedy, for sure.
So when you weigh those manageable negatives against all those glorious advantages, what do you get? Well, that brings us to the grand finale, the massive payoff, hitting that $5 trillion economy.
And the argument here is that with this system in place, India wouldn't just slowly crawl towards that $5 trillion mark. No. The growth would be so explosive, we wouldn't just reach $5 trillion, we'd overshoot it before the calculator app on your phone even finished loading.
And I have to say, I love this way of thinking about it. The goal is completely reframed. It's not about India chasing the $5 trillion mark anymore. Instead, India's economy would be moving so fast that the $5 trillion mark would have to start running to catch us. It just completely flips the whole dynamic on its head. And that's really the ultimate ambition here. That $5 trillion figure, it stops being the goal. It becomes the starting line. It's just the entry ticket to this whole new economic game. We're talking about a vision for growth that's just on another level.
So we'll end with this final, really powerful thought from the source. Is this whole idea completely nuts? Yeah, probably. Is it actually practical? Well, that's a whole other debate, but it leaves us with a really provocative question. What if the biggest thing holding back India's prosperity isn't a bad policy or a lack of resources, but just a lack of courage? The courage to try something this radical, this different. It's definitely something to think about.